Welcome to this wonderful Sales Master session. I'm happy to open up for Shauna and Creven after me. I will present you today something I have thought a lot about it in the last 15 years while I have been in touch with several sales methodologies in the past. And usually it was a little bit put on me, never really explained, and I learned a couple of those. And since then, I have seen a couple, and I always thought it would be interesting to just understand why companies are actually using those. And therefore, I will talk a little bit about my experience in terms of what kind of sales methodologies I have seen and we worked with, and why it's important to always think about this a little bit and understand why you should always, a little bit revise what you are doing in terms of sales and how this looks like. So I'll start with the first slide. This is the agenda, just to give you kind of a heads up where we are going in the next 15 minutes, 4 points, 15 minutes, buckle your seatbelts, brace for impact. I will not give you any kind of advice on sales methodologies. I will not dig deep in why are they or what are they doing. I will just give you some ideas how to use them and when to use them. Then I'll walk you through the HubSpot sales process for a couple of minutes, where we have been and how we started and where we are at the moment and why. Then I'll go a little bit through the aspect of value selling when you enter the upmarket area, and how value selling actually is helpful. And then, very important, regardless whatever you're doing in terms of the methodology and how strict or how good, very well defined your process is, never neglect the people on the other side. You're still selling to people. So let's start and kick this off with the methodologies themselves. So this is a heavy slide initially. So you see there are a few things to consider. When you talk about sales methodologies, you should always think what kind of methodology actually fits my sales process, my product, my core customer groups, my services, and my sales reps. So when you have a single point solution, it's usually a good way to think about Challenger and Snap and overall inbound sales. It's a commercial way of teaching the customer, educating the buyer about a problem they might have or undervalue, and let them actually let the product solve this kind of problem. So it's very straightforward. It's very strict. It's usually the way that one sales rep talks to one person who needs this kind of problem solved or who is looking for a solution and is responsible actually for solving this problem within the department. And it's often described as a single point solution that actually helps cover this problem. So the buyer needs to be educated for this. The seller teaches the buyer about the values, and it's usually very difficult to actually talk to any kind of more complex buying center or people actually. So therefore, it's these kind of methodologies help with those aspects. Moving on to a more complex environment, solution selling or spin might be the right approach. It's a more sophisticated approach, leaning more into kind of a heavy and more dense discovery phase where you have consistently questioning, developed question framework to understand and uncover the problems and the issues this customer might have, diagnose with opening questions the problems and the issues, qualifying against them, and then explore the impact the solution might have on the business overall in general, and then more particular on the problems, amplify the needs and urgencies, and then probing and confirming all the time. So this is a more advanced version of sales and a more kind of in-depth questioning way. And it's usually solution selling is not a fit for transactional sales environments. It's with standardized solutions. Therefore, this kind of questioning is an overkill for a single point solution for someone who is managing this kind of very narrow problem. And then you have the very advanced version. It's more covered by Sandler, Maddock, or Miller Heiman, value selling themselves. it's working or managing a sales process, more a project management role the sales rep has here in a more high complex sales environment with multiple decision makers and with an assessment of several competitive solutions. It's a methodical way of gathering information and researching and preparation. And it's often used by vendors who with a specific addressable market or going into verticals and usually trying to close business with long sales cycles and in complex environments. So this is just the idea to when you evaluate sales methodologies, think about what kind of product you have, about your customer core group, everything you want to address. Moving on, this is the process sales HubSpot had in the past. It was very straightforward, 4 points. We had a connect call, kind of band criteria, AIDA, then dig in a little bit in a larger conversation, qualification call, moved to a demo where we pointed out how the solution could actually help the customer solving for their needs, and then right to the closing without having a kind of larger trial period. It was a very straightforward period. We had partially sales cycles with under 25 days or 20 days. It was very strict managed, and we didn't really allow anybody to move away from this kind of structure. Now, in the new world, we are looking at a way more difficult situation since HubSpot is moving up market with a couple of products, and we are having the opportunity to sell into larger and more complex deals. So what you can see here, we are adding more difficult stakeholder situations. A buying center do this. We need partially to pull in partners who help us. We have more complex procurement situations, more complex legal situations, and even signing processes we need to follow through. So the whole process is more complex. In total, we have more touch points with several stakeholders and decision makers. We have like new processes like legal and procurement included. We need to involve partners that obviously sometimes give reps the feeling that they are losing control and drive in the sales process and become more project managers, while they need to triangulate the communication between a prospect, a partner, and a seller. So the whole sales process management turns into a project management, which is not easy for a rep to add or to tap into the sales motion. And overall, we need a certain, I call it always, boardroom certification, kind of ability to talk to C-level and boardroom people to be able to get their buy-in to endorse the vendor and endorse HubSpot, and therefore make it possible for the reps to talk to all these people. So when you make it very simple, it looked in the past like this. Two people talking to each other. A key account manager on the HubSpot side talks to a main contact buyer, some champions, and they just dealt with in the back with their people to sell something. Now it's a little bit more complicated. We are having actually the key account manager, the rep, is managing several parts and pieces within HubSpot, talking to their, so to say, peers on the other side, running a more complex project, plugging in resources in and out, and hopefully is successful with this. But you can see this is a totally different sales motion. So therefore, you need to rethink all the time how you actually approach your sales process and how this looks like. Value selling is one option, and I don't talk about value selling as actually the service provider in terms of the methodology, more the idea to sell value to the customer and to cover this. And just an example, we don't have too much time, and you can go through this in the recording in more detail. But this is a little bit the idea when you talk about value selling. To break it down in several aspects, you need to build questions around. So when you start with a business issue, we don't talk about the problem itself. The problem is number two. The business issue is a long-term accomplishment of the company, more a strategic level you want to learn about as a rep to just meet their business objectives. Usually the stuff C-level is more involved in. Then you have high likely and very often business issues tied into certain problems who are more tactical, and then you talk to the people who are responsible for this. You build a solution by this, and you need to understand is actually what happens when the company is not actually buying into this kind of solution. So you're looking for a compelling event. Literally the question, what happens if you don't do this to your customer, to your business? And therefore, you build the whole value around the business and the business value, as well as the personal value for your stakeholders, as well for your C-level. And then based on this, you build a plan, kind of a closing plan, as a mutual agreed closing plan, including everybody who is somehow involved in. Therefore, you need to address and understand the power and the buying center here. So these kind of 7 aspects are usually included in all the kind of methodologies, and you need to have questions and you need to be trained towards these kind of aspects of the business. And these are the 2 slides just as examples. These are opening, probing, and confirming questions for a CMO, and next for a CRO. I will not read those. You can just pause when you look at the recording later and go through those. It's actually just an example. You have to have these kind of OPR, OPC questions for different roles and responsibilities. It's always important to understand their point of view and where they're coming from, and therefore it makes sense to re-engineer this down to the certain role you're talking to. Now, as a last piece of this, I said it initially, always people make emotional decisions based on a logic reason. And I'll show you as an example an email we received after we sold to a customer, a fairly large customer. You can imagine this was a kind of larger email, very long, and they talked a lot about the product and how HubSpot actually helps them in terms of the business, in terms of their overall experience they had during the onboarding. But what was important for me to see how often they talked about the emotional aspect of the sales process and the overall project management. You can see there that they were looking, as they, in a quote here, emotional solution, how HubSpot in the process helped their confidence level, and they were looking for someone who could trust, and they fell in love with HubSpot. The sales reps felt like a friend. These are all emotional aspects of an enterprise customer, and he wrote this as a kind of feedback after purchasing HubSpot. And this is great to see that it's still important, besides the overall project, the process, and the strictness and the professional way how to manage such a process, to still work with people and to understand what they need to make this decision. Final slide here is just for you again, to make sure you even if you sell an enterprise, you still sell to people. The people will buy with emotion and look to justify that emotion with logic and a business case, and make the emotional decisions for logical reasons. So you have to make sure that the prospect feels your empathy, your curiosity, and your care about your business. And they will actually help you to let them help them with your energy, interest, and questions, and your excellence in terms of managing the process and the project management, because this will eventually help them to make a call for you and for your product and for your services. And that's all from my side. I still hope